Picking up on what the Minister has just said and referring back to Section 34 of Part 3, which I commented on earlier, picking up where I left off on that, I just have a couple of comments I'd like to make. But before I do, let me just clear away one thing so that we don't have to revisit it, because I think it's rather unedifying for this House. There are various forms of ad hominem attacks, and I took some exception to the Minister casting a slight aspersion on our co-leader, who asked a question in the House in good faith today. That question pertained to conflict of interest. That question pertained to a conflict of interest, and I just would like the Minister and his colleagues to accept the fact that any opposition member in this House does have a right to ask a question pertaining to conflict of interest, which is a constitutional precept embedded in this democracy along with everyone else. And just to conclude on that point, I find it somewhat gratuitous of the Minister to offer his view of what our previous co-leader might have to think about the standards of this party. Our co-leader, both previous and present, aspire to the highest standards. I know both very well, all three that I did know, the two current ones and Jeanette Fitzsimons. And I do not think that this party needs to take advice from this Minister about the standards that the Green Party is aspiring to attain. And if he continues to do it, then he would invite me and others, but particularly me, to rank this Minister in terms of integrity and dignity in the context of some of his own predecessors, some of whom I know very well indeed. So I would invite, on a more positive note, I would like the Minister to address one thing that has not come out in the debate to date yet, and that is the following. I presume that the Creech report and the Minister's judgment about the Environment Canterbury Regional Council is not based in any way on a judgment pertaining to the individual capabilities and competence or integrity of those councillors. It is to do with something else. And I think it would actually probably clear the air a little bit if we could invite the Minister to actually make a statement to that effect. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but I have not seen it being made before. And I know at least half of the Council, and I have a high regard for each of them as individuals, and they've done good work. And if they are to be disbanded for whatever reason, and we can debate the reasons here, then I think it's incumbent on the Minister and the rest of us to acknowledge the individual competence and good work that they have each done. The Minister was wont just a moment ago to refer to the Canterbury water management strategy and complain that the opposition, in fact the Labour Party, had misunderstood the point. The point, I think, and as he put it, the strategy the natural resources management strategy has been in place for the better part of 18 years, and there's no water management plan coming out, and therefore that is the principal reason, the criterion for disbanding the Council. May I remind the Minister that, in fact, the government, the national government, back in the 1990s, 1991 it was, introduced the Resource Management Act. 18 years later, exactly 18 years later, the same national government, its successors, amended the Act. Clearly, the Act was not perfect at the very beginning. Does that require that we disband this government? It's the same period of time, sir. I spoke earlier about the deadlines that Environment Canterbury was meant to meet and failed to do so in producing the water management plan. And that appears to be the principal reason why ECAN is being disbanded. And I identified the fact that out of 15 regional and unitary councils, 6 of them did not have complete water management plans established. 3 have not done any. 1 has made a statement. Mr. Chair.
Dr. Kennedy Graham.
One has made a statement and two others have simply introduced water management plans in part only. So where does that leave us in terms of time frame? One of the issues that we have to look at is the various size of the irrigation responsibilities, regional council by regional council. And I can offer statistics for the Minister, and he's free to correct them if he thinks they're different. These are the statistics we have gathered, and they are the following. Of the irrigation undertaken by New Zealand, 62% comes from Canterbury, 17% comes from Otago. For the rest, they are less than they are 5% or less. So there's this huge differentiation between, in fact, if you make Canterbury and Otago together, you're touching 80%, 79% of irrigation, which is huge. So it is important to regard those two regions more or less as separate and unique compared with the others. But as I say, some of the others have not actually achieved the stated goal that there's the criterion by which the Minister is disbanding ECAN. Let us look at them and let us have regard to what fate may lie in store for them. We find Marlborough has 3% of irrigation. It has a plan in part only. We have Tasman, which has 2% of irrigation. It has not yet introduced part 5 of its plan. Run together, those two councils represent 5% of New Zealand's irrigation. What are we to do with those, Minister? Let us put a deadline on those two regional councils to complete their work, let us say, by 30 June this year, failure of which would require that they be disbanded and we can introduce an unelected commission. We find Gisborne, which has 0.4% of irrigation. Let us give them a deadline of 30 June to completely, they have made a statement only. Let them translate that statement into a water management plan by 30 June, failing which they will be disbanded. Auckland, sir, is responsible for 0.2% of the country's irrigation. It is tiny. But we know what's happening to Auckland, so let us give the super city an extension. Let us give it to the 1st of April 2011 to introduce a water management plan, failing which we have to disband the super city and return to the status quo ante. My favourite, Mr. Chairman, is the West Coast. The West Coast is responsible for 0.37% of the nation's irrigation. You may think that is trifling, but, sir, I suggest that that is an onerous responsibility on the West Coast to draw up a water management plan. I think we should give it only 5 months. Give it to 31 August 2010. Failure to have a complete, integrated water management plan in place by 31 August requires that it be disbanded. It should not be beyond our competence, Mr. Chairman, collectively watching this government in action to ensure that in addition to Canterbury, the other 5 regional councils will go under the guillotine no later than the 1st of April 2011. Thank you.